Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show. We apologise for the slight delay. A few things came up in real life that provided us to push it back a little bit, but we're finally here.
You can blame me, it's fine.
I was going to say, I apologize for nothing.
So
I apologize for everything.
Like we mentioned on Tuesday and the week before, we decided to switch out the show today. Instead of doing a crafting discussion, we went ahead and decided to go with a player Q&A, and we're joined today by Temmi. Some of you might already know, who's done some of the lore videos on YouTube, I believe. And Lex, do you want to go and kick off the Q&A?
Sure, let's get started. So, tell us a little bit about your gaming background.
So I was the youngest of 3 kids, which meant that my early gaming history was pretty much watching my older brother play all video games, then watching my older sister play the same video game again. So by the time it got to me, I had already seen it played and completed about 3 times. So I started to find interest in a lot of the nuanced type side quests, stuff like that my brother and sister might not have done. So most of my early gaming history was about just wandering around and finding all the Easter eggs and like the new stuff that would be interesting to me. So then as I got older, that was the stuff that I liked. I liked the lore, the Easter eggs, finding the little secrets, min-maxing builds, stuff like that, because that was the only stuff that I really got to experience for myself until I was like 15.
Very cool. So, what got you interested in Pantheon?
The lore. I remember I first found the game like early 2016, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay. Name dropping, bomb. And I wasn't interested because none of the lore was written. And then I went back a couple of months later and some of the lore had popped up and I started reading it, and before I knew it, I'd been reading all of the lore. I spent like an entire afternoon reading it. It was like 6 hours, and I was like, wow, I forgot to eat lunch. Wow, I also forgot to eat dinner. Okay, I clearly need to check out this game.
So related to that real quick, since you're interested in the lore, and there's quite a bit of lore on the races out there, which is your favourite?
Like which specific subject in the lore interests me the most?
From the races, yeah. What's your most favourite?
So, I'm actually most interested in the gnomes right now. It kind of changes as I dive more into the lore because there's so much mystery about them, and I think they're touching on a trope that isn't really touched on very often in video games. So there's a very good chance that they might not be biological. They might be eternal. Actually, in a thread where I got Justin Gearhart to respond directly, he said that almost all of the races are biological except for one, which I believe was him foreshadowing that the gnomes weren't biological. In their lore, they no longer have physical forms. They made the decision to get rid of their physical forms as they were descending. They didn't descend at that point, but they were like, their home planet was being destroyed. And they gave up their physical forms to capture their souls inside their masks. And there's a very good chance that they are eternal, which is really interesting because usually that's the elven role, but it might be the gnomes in this case. And they're also sort of like the typical arcane-y, like creators and inventors, and they're really, really interested in like technology. So they might be really crucial in pioneering like magitech, which I'm also interested in. So I like the gnomes right now.
Nice.
I'm kind of interested in your take on the Archai then, because I don't think they're biological.
So the impression that I got was that they were biological, but they were created, and I think, so I'm also kind of interested in the Archai too. That's my second race that I think is the most interesting, because they were created by another race on their home planet of Suroa, or sorry, not Roa, Suroa is what they call their new place on Terminus, but Roa, and they were originally created as slaves, like the perfect beasts of burden, and they overthrew their equally oppressed creators and their creators' slavers and sort of liberated themselves. And that was shortly thereafter that they came to Terminus, but I think they're biological. Not obviously, no one's positive of anything at this point, but I think they're biological. I think they're really cool. I like the idea of an elemental race, like the like power foci in their chest. I think is really interesting. Hopefully, it doesn't end up becoming like cheesy, I guess.
Yeah, I'd have to agree
Like-
with you there. Of course,
Like
I'm going to go
Last
back and...
Airbender stuff.
Oh, good lord.
Yeah, I
Oh.
hope it.
Oh my god.
I hope it does not become that.
Please, no. So I'm pretty sure that we already know the answer. But just in case we don't, what's the most exciting thing for you about Pantheon?
So it's actually a tie between the lore and some of the interdependencies. So that's both like player interdependency in the form of like the community that's going to be required. Like you're going to need to know people to do things, and also like the class interdependency, because like no matter how lush and beautiful a world is, it's like kind of boring if you're playing it alone. So
Amen.
it's actually a tie for those two things, like the interdependency, the community and everything, and also the lore.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, what class and race are you likely to pick, and why?
Because all girls play elves, so I'm gonna play an elf. That's actually not true. That's bullshit. But I am probably gonna play an elf, and it's also true that most of the girls that I know play elves. I hate falling into the stereotype, but it's unfortunately true. I fell in love with Tolkienese elves and just never got over it. So.
Yeah.
And class. I'm not sure if it's gonna be Enchanter or Druid, one of those two, depending on which one I like more in game.
Nice. So, related to that subject, what is your least favourite race and least favourite class?
I can feel the heartbreak coming already.
Humans, actually, I find them very boring. As I usually find them in most games. And I get it. Typically, if you look at statistics for games, the race that is almost always the most popular by a huge landslide will be the humans, because even though it's a fantasy world, people like comfort. They like knowing what a character is going to look like. And I mean, honestly, most of the armor is made first and foremost for the humans, so a lot of times it just looks better on them. I get that. I played a gnome and WoW, and nothing looked right. It was awful. But humans, I just think they're boring. It's not so much a dislike thing. It's just I like them the least. I think they're cool. King Avender sounds like a badass. He ascended the throne when he was pretty young. It's pretty cool.
He sounds like a swell guy.
Yeah. Are we not supposed to cuss?
I do.
It's
Okay,
fine.
we're
It's
good.
fine.
I have gamer's mouth. And as far as class, hard to say because we haven't seen them all. I feel like that's a trick question. Kind of feeling rogue, just because we have seen a fair amount of that, and it kind of seemed like at first, like it just wasn't very eye-catching. Like in the streams, it was just like, oh, there's a rogue. And then you forget about him for the rest of the stream, but it's really hard to say because that might change a lot. They might be really, really cool later.
Okay. Nice. So, if you had to choose between the two, which one would you pick to play and why?
I'm gonna say Rogue because at least it has the potential to be interesting. I think it's so
Take
lame.
that, you filthy humans!
Take that, humans! Humans suck!
I'm waiting for hateful comments on my YouTube channel.
I wouldn't worry about that, because trust me, I get most of them.
Okay, good, thanks. Take it for the team.
Bring it on, people! So, in terms of mechanics, what are you mostly looking forward to?
So I think I've been thinking about this question all week, and I still don't know if I want to say the perception system or intelligent AI. I think they're both really interesting. Perception system, duh, because that's how we're going to learn a lot about the lore, the quest, blah, 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 stereotypical things that people would expect me to say by now. But also, the intelligent AI, I think, has the potential to be really, really, really cool. In one of the recent newsletters, they were talking a little bit more about AI, and it got me really hyped. I was like, oh, this sounds really awesome, where like AI might have priorities, like things that they'll do in priority. So if certain elements are available or if certain things are true, then they'll do one thing, but otherwise, like if there's another element that might be true, then they'll do a different thing. Just even for like the flavor of a town, but then also for like NPCs out in the wilderness. Like maybe the lions will hunt the deer or something. I don't know. I'm making stuff up, but it sounds like it could be really interesting. So
that would be very emergent.
Yep.
So, if you could get into Pantheon right now, where would you go, and what would you do?
I want to
kill all humans.
I want to see the insides of the sanctums. The sanctums, for people that aren't like super lore savvy, there were 3 sanctums built, one on each of the primary continents, and they were supposed to be like the holdouts for the huge armies in the Deicide War, which happened about 300 something years before the launch of the game. So they are ostensibly ruins now, but I think they're going to be like incredibly interesting. They might have like some use as like portal hubs. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be like in game, but I think they're going to be like
good idea.
super, super, super interesting with like tons of lore about a time when the races were like at peace with each other and there were war wizards, and I don't know, I think it's going to be super cool.
So tell us about one of your most standout or funniest moments in your previous MMO experiences.
So this isn't from an MMO, it's actually from a text-based game called Empyrean, which I believe just shut down pretty recently, so that was a little tearjerker for me. My sister, also of course, dorkiness runs in families, she's a huge dork as well, and she was playing this game for a lot longer than I was, and she invited me to come play with her, so I'm like, okay, I'll try it out. And a couple days after I created my first character, I think it was like level 20 something, which is pretty low, soft cap was 100. There was this tournament, and someone on my sister's team had some real life emergency pop up. They needed a stand-in. So my sister's like, well, you know, my baby sister is here. She's literally sitting right next to me. I can tell her exactly what to do. She's not geared or statted, but she can just be bait or something.
That's nice.
So this happened, and these are all level 100 people. There were like 6 or 7 different teams, and it was elimination. So it was in like a typical elimination format where 2 teams would go against each other, and the winner would go to the next round or whatever. So there were a couple of weak teams that I think the proctors of the tournament just put us against because they felt bad. So we actually got to the final round. In the final round, it was like a really, really, really good team versus 4 good people in a handicap. In this text-based game, it's a lot different than MMOs where there were different rooms, and we were in one room, and then our opponent's team started in another room, and a room is like a mini phase. Like, things in one room don't usually affect another room. So I was basically huddled in our room, just spamming all of my defenses over and over and over as they attempted to strip the defenses and pull me from the room into another room using a magic spell, and they were trying to kill me, so it would be a 5 versus 4. I spent like 10 minutes doing this, like literally in tears, because I was so worried that I was going to let my sister down. And eventually my sister managed to counterpull one of their guys, and they pulled him into our room and they nuked him down. And then we actually ended up winning this tournament. And the punchline is, one of my sister's friends who was spectating said, I got really scared for a moment because I saw Tem's HP so low. And then I realized that was her maximum HP. And it was just like horrifying and an adrenaline rush. And I'm not usually a PvPer, that's always been my sister's domain, but it was like terrifying and amazing and horrible.
So, if you could pick 3 things to be implemented into Pantheon, what would they be and why?
So, I think, well, so it's really hard to answer that question right now because there might be a lot of things that change from now until launch, like things that they do implement or things that they decide to take out. One thing that I actually really liked once Diablo implemented it was smart loot. And the way they're talking about loot is that it might be pseudo randomized, where with the exception of legendaries, some of like the basic gear might have random stats. So like you might get a silver sword that has dex on it, or you might get a silver sword with the exact same base stats that has int or something like that. They've kind of like danced around that idea, and I think that can be a recipe for a lot of frustration, where even when you finally get the silver sword to drop, it doesn't have your stat on it. So I think smart loot can be a really positive thing. Not that you should always get exactly what you want, but just that there's a notably better chance of getting loot that is at least relevant to your class. So, like, I guess for me, from a lore standpoint, the explanation for it would be when you're fighting something, if you see that he has a cool ring, you're going to be careful to not damage the ring because you're a caster and it could be useful to you. Whereas you're not going to care if you, like, burn the crap out of his leather armor because you don't wear leather, you're a caster. So, I think that would be interesting. Anything they want to do with smart AI would make me happy, like monsters having different tactics, maybe even monsters having the ability to like have different skill sets at low health, which, I mean, we've seen precedent for that, but like just smarter AI in general, because there's not going to be PvP, and a big part of the game is going to be fighting these same monsters over and over, so the more interesting they can make it, the longer they're going to hold players to the game. And then for a third one, I don't know, maybe just like PvP taunts. I don't know. I always feel bad for tanks in PvP. My sister was always a tank, so I showed her the questions, and she was like, "You have to say something about this." And I'm like, "Okay."
This is a serious issue. We need to address it.
And I feel like tanks, and I mean, we don't even know if PvP is going to be a legitimate thing in Pantheon, but like, I always feel bad when like a tank does no damage, has no personal heals, and just has like taunts, and then they go to PvP and they're like, "I'm gonna go uninstall now."
That's me. I do the same thing. I always play a tank. Someone tells me, "Hey, let's go PvP," and I look at him like, "Why?
Like,
that rock over there would be better."
I'm spec'd full tank right now. Do you not understand what that means? Like,
Exactly.
My stuff doesn't even work in PvP.
Taunting them does nothing.
Like, if they did it in Dota, Axe can taunt. It's legit. He's coming back, too.
I remember in
like,
Warhammer Online, tanks are really good in PvP.
Yeah, I don't see why tanks can't taunt players. That's...
Yes, it's something that always kind of baffled me as well. Like, you know, you got taunt and then, hey, boom, bounces back off, and like, what do you want?
See, now whenever my character taunts, I'm going to be wishing he goes.
I hope that there are voice lines where they actually say insults, because that's what a taunt would really be against humanoid targets.
I would love that. But we know they're probably going to be very tight on a VO budget, so
yeah.
I'll probably do something where every time I hit taunt, I scream at the screen or something.
I mean, you can just make, like, macros. You can't press more than one skill at a time, but you can press a skill and simultaneously do, like, ASCII art in chat.
Yeah, I've done that. And when the RP section of my brain kind of wants a little attention. Like, what was really cool in Anarchy Online, you can actually make your own sound packs.
Oh, that's cool.
So you could make like emotes that had sound, and as long as everyone else had the sound pack, they would hear it. And we used to do something for our tank that every time he would use his taunt button, the macro would use this command, and you'd hear something just absolutely, completely vulgar that was just so mind-blowingly funny. You're like, oh my god, I missed a heal. He's dead. I'm so sorry.
My death trigger in Empyrean, this text-based game, whenever I died, I would get ASCII art of Vegeta just like taunting me. Yep.
Oh god.
Dead again.
Too
Thanks,
funny.
Vegeta. I know. I created you.
So, what's the number one thing from the game tenants that stand out to you, and why?
Oh boy. I have to pick one.
Yes. There can only be one.
Okay.
I was waiting for the shut up, Lex, next.
Commitment to a style of play that focuses on immersive combat and engaging group mechanics. I think that a lot of the other tenets are really important, but like as difficult or as full as the world might be, if it's not really engaging, it's still going to be a one and done. You do something once and then you're done with it, and eventually any game will always run out of things. So I feel like making it engaging and more dynamic is what's really going to bring longevity to the game.
Yeah. So sticking with the difficult questions that apparently I got, because I guess Yarn doesn't want you to be angry with him. What is your number one thing from the Pantheon difference that you want to see in game the most?
I feel like we've seen a lot of this stuff already. I mean, it would be the... Oh gosh, all of them? Well, okay, so...
All of them. Wrap them in a bundle, we're good.
Yep.
Yeah, just all of them. It's probably a tie between the perception system and NPC dispositions. So I think, like, you know, we were sort of talking about the AI and how it could be more intelligent. Like, I think that's a big part of what's going to keep the game going for a long time is, you know, like you go to a town and you've been to a town a million times before, but this time, for some reason, that dog crossed the street at exactly the right point and triggered an event with this guard, and it's just this huge, like, avalanche of quests, and I don't know, I think that has the potential to be incredibly awesome.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were saying. It was just like, mind blown.
Yeah, like, I don't know, and like especially finding the Easter eggs, like even when people start to figure out the triggers, watching players try to like metagame and position things in such a way that certain events happen. I mean, we've seen that, but it's been much more simple in the past. But if it was like complex chains of events that had to happen in a certain way, like just watching players try to manipulate the world to get dragons to spawn or something, I don't know. I think it could be really cool.
I can see it right now. I did exactly the same thing, and I didn't get a dragon. I got a giant snowman. What in the world is going on? It's like, well, your cold resistance was really high, so that's what counted when it spawned the thing. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
If you could spend a single day with anyone from VR, who would it be and why?
Sorry, Kilson, I love you too, but Justin Gearhart wins.
It's okay, Kilson. I'll invite you to my barbecue.
It's true that girls are suckers for accents, but the lore man, he knows he has what I want.
Perfect answer.
There was a newsletter a couple of months ago, and there was an interview with Justin Gearhart, and people were complaining, and I'm like, no, shut up.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what?
This is the best newsletter we've ever had. You don't understand.
Lore is actually, you know, it's very important. Without lore, there's no backbone, there's no backstory, there's no getting involved and getting connected to the individual characters, races, towns, world itself. It's actually, you know, the better the lore, the more fun the game's going to be in the long run. Especially when secrets are hidden within the lore that they... I mean, there's so much in the lore currently now that they could take later on and turn that into game assets for us to go hunting with. Imagine the lore and the lore keeping thread in the forums. That's just like boom, right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
That was awesome.
And I think a lot of people sort of discredit lore because they don't understand immediately how it improves their gaming experience. But I think like there's a lot to be said for and I think all games are beautiful in their own way, but I think that there are a lot of games that don't focus as heavily on lore, and those are the types of games that you see people kind of just blaze through them. They don't really appreciate the world, they don't really appreciate the quests, and at the end of it, they don't really care about their character, they don't really care about the world, and there's nothing wrong with those types of games. I love a good action hack and slash as much as the next person, but I think it's the games that have more deep and interesting lore that sort of pulls you in, because you find yourself actually stopping to read the text or stopping to look at something or stopping to admire like a vista, and then before you know it, you've spent twice as much time in this game as you have in other games. And I think people kind of think like these resources are better spent on other things, but I think it's a lot bigger like subliminal part of the gaming experience than what people really give it credit for.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like a movie. If it doesn't have a good story to it, you kind of look at it and go, that was a waste of time.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same with games.
Like you might watch the whole movie, but
even like
you're not really as attached to it.
Even if you go in for just like PvP or just because you want to raid or whatever, the story does still matter to a point, because in the back of your head, it's going to keep you engaged. It's going to give you hints on why things are the way they are. So this one thing that could potentially be completely out of place actually makes sense.
And especially with the way they're talking about doing the quest system, like if you don't know the lore, you're just never going to finish quests.
Alright, so before we move on to the next questions, I'm going to quickly bring this up as well. You've done a few videos now on YouTube covering some of the lore. Can we expect to see more from you in the future?
Yes. I actually have scripts written for most of the races. It's just a matter of doing the voice recording and making the videos for them. I actually I'm in like a transition period with my job, so things have been really hectic for me in the last couple of months. But once that smooths over, I'm definitely going to be doing more.
I'll quickly go and link your channel to chat. So moving on, are you main for game or an altaholic?
Probably mostly a main character. I might have like one alt just to sort of see other things, and I'm probably gonna end up creating one of every class so that I can get footage for it for future videos once the game launches. But pretty much just one.
Okay, cool. So do you have a guild preference?
I actually have a guild that we haven't really started recruiting too heavily yet because the game is so far from launch, but I'm actually a guild leader of a guild, a heavy role-playing guild, of course.
Nice.
Very cool. So what other interests do you have outside of gaming?
There's
this
one of them.
This strange person that seems to be stalking me.
This strange person that just came into my home. This is one of my other interests.
Hi, person.
Hello.
Yes.
Blink if you're in danger.
I also, besides gaming, I have D&D 2 nights a week. I'm a dork.
Hey, dorks are the best kind of people.
I mean, obviously, but besides that, I just moved up into management at work, so it's kind of busy right now. Hopefully, I'll get like a consistent schedule soon, and that would be wonderful. But besides
Dayhawk.
I think Dave's quickly trying to become your #1 fan. Settle down, Dave. So, when it comes to longer gaming sessions, do you have any kind of like superstitious ritual or habits?
I wouldn't say superstitions. As far as habits, I just like the Sour Patch gummy worms. They're so good. And, like, especially like longer I game, the more I want. It's horrible. But Yeah, I love like the sour and salty and sweet. I don't know. That's just like my usual go-to if I'm gonna have like a really long session. And Mountain Dew Kickstarter, this has not been endorsed, but they are very good.
Okay. Before we move to the final, most important question of all, you mentioned a few minutes back that you'll be doing some other videos as well. What can we expect to see on our channel in the future?
I am gonna be doing one video for each of the races. I've been kind of bottlenecked because I want footage of the races. Like we haven't seen any Scar yet. We haven't seen any Myrrh yet. I believe we've seen all the others.
Seen the gnomes. Seen
No
the,
elves.
oh,
No
haven't
elves
seen
either.
the elves either. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
elves, no star.
No Myrrh.
Yeah, no
So
dark mirror.
I've kind of been holding back on that. With the update we had on crafting from a couple of newsletters ago, I started writing a script for that because I think the idea of like crafting and sort of uniquely customizing your gear is pretty interesting. I also wanted to do one for like specifically the Deicide War. I touched on it a little bit in my timeline one, which that was my first video ever, and like looking back, I'm so embarrassed by it because I'm just like I've learned so much about like voice recording and video editing, and I don't know, that one embarrasses me, but I touched on it briefly
Everybody
there.
starts somewhere. Exactly.
And my friends say, you know what, leave it there because it's like a marker for where you started, and it's not that bad. But for me as like the creator, I look at it and I'm like, oh, I just like.
Oh, don't worry.
You know, we are always our worst critics anyway. You know, people that create content are their worst critics. I mean, when I look back at some of our videos, or when we do some of our shows, we think as well when we finish, we're like, you know, this was bad. This was really bad.
But it's year 2017, so someone will like it. It's someone's thing.
20 years down the road, we'll get another like.
So
that makes 5.
Let's go for this last question then. So, who's the VOT host with the most? Why are you smiling, Lex?
Cause, come on now.
Hey Derek, pick one. Just point to a picture for me.
Guy in the middle.
Guy in the middle.
Oh.
Derek, I love
What?
There we go. Lexa pulls tie. Lexa gets back to the tie. So
that is so horrible.
If you could say anything now, your final words to VR, what would they be?
Keep writing the lore. I think it's a big part of the longevity of the game, and you know, don't listen to the haters because people are gonna hate.
Nice. So that covers the interview with Temmi. We hope you enjoyed it. The video will be put on YouTube tomorrow, along with our previous tavern talk when I get home tomorrow. We don't have the calendar for September yet. We hope to have that done by next Thursday. So Thursday's show is going to be a surprise. We don't know what we're going to do yet. So stay tuned for that. And hopefully we'll have the calendar for you by that time. Thanks for joining us, Temmi.
Thank you very much.
And definitely nice to get you on. We apologise again for us starting late. Like I said, a few things came up in real life.
I apologize for forcing them to start late.
It's all good.
I work in the restaurant business. When it gets busy, I get stuck.
So with that, guys, have a great evening, great night, and we will see you all next Thursday. Same channel, different time. But finally, we get to say that. Finally, we get to say that. Different time, back to 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
So we'll see you all on Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, same channel, and have a great night. Thanks for joining us, Temmi.
Everybody.
Lex, thanks for being there. And we will see you all hopefully with Josh as well. Josh couldn't be with us today. As you saw, he was missing. But hopefully he'll be back next Thursday. Have a great night.